the Resident Evil films, there have been two adaptations. There have been live action films that have been coming out with featuring Mila Jovovich as the main lead of the films, and then there was an animated film series to kind of mirror that later on. But this one was more. It was actually a part of the canon of the main games. Now, live action, loosely based. The animated films were more akin to the games. They were canon. They featured the same characters, same creatures, and I really like the films. The first one was The Generation. The second one was Damnation. The third one was Vendetta, and then they came out with a television series called Infinite Darkness. Now, the first three films were relatively good. My favorites actually are Damnation and Vendetta. The Generation, I think, is actually a solid watch as well. Infinite Darkness, I have issues with, especially when it comes to some of the characterization, some of the direction they decided to go with the storytelling, and just kind of overall this familiar formula that I feel like when I start playing games or watching the Resident Evil films. Now, to get into the new film that's coming out, it's going to be called Resident Evil Dead Island. Now, when came across this, I thought this might possibly be an adaptation of possibly Caliban Cove or the Heavenly Island manga that's actually canon with the movies and the games as well. If you haven't read those, the Maharwa Desire and the Heavenly Island manga are actually extremely awesome reads, and they actually bridge the gap between a couple of the 5 and 6, and I believe 6 and 7. I could be wrong on that, but they're freaking awesome. So go check those out if you haven't read those. But anyways, so this film, there's not really much going on to it. I did see a bit of a teaser trailer. They got Leon coming back because these films actually, the Generation featured Leon and Claire, and then you had Damnation, which featured Leon and Ada, and then you had Vendetta, which featured Rebecca, Leon, and Chris, and Infinite Darkness featured Claire and Leon again, and then you have this new one, Dead Island, which is going to feature Leon, Chris, and it's teased at the end, Jill Valentine. One of the most interesting aspects to this that I think is actually pretty freaking interesting, which somebody else pulled up, is I don't really remember seeing Leon and Jill really interact in any of the series. Now, when I read the book series by S.D. Perry and Steve Perry and them, there's like a scene where you see these two characters interact, but for the most part, you never really see Jill and Leon share any kind of screen time over any of the games. So to see her and them possibly interact is actually pretty cool. Just like when playing Resident Evil 6 or when Vendetta came out, you actually see these really cool, iconic scenes between Leon and Chris, which that's one of the best things about Vendetta. The movie does have its share of problems, but seeing these two awesome badasses just interact with each other, fight alongside each other, playing alongside each other, just seeing these characters basically just share scenes together was possibly the best possible thing to come out that freaking movie. Even Resident Evil 6, for all the crap that I give that game, at least we got one decent, short, but decent fight between Chris and Leon. And it's cool seeing the different dynamics of how their different fighting styles, where you see Chris be more power-based, hard-hitting. Leon is a bit more quicker and more with more precision, and I like that. I like seeing them mirror each other, not only when you see them in combat against each other, but while fighting enemies, while fighting these different enemies. So I'm interested to see. It looks like it's going to be a prison island, like it possibly be like Alcatraz. I was thinking would it be something similar to what happened with Resident Evil Revelations 2, because that featured an island, but this one appears to be more of an outbreak rather than a controlled experiment, which was in Resident Evil Revelations 2. I think this does have roots to be potentially something good. Now, earlier I had mentioned that there is a bit of a curse that Resident Evil kind of follows in a lot of them, in a lot of series, and it goes really like this. one of the OG characters pops up. They fight new monsters. There are new characters. The new characters rarely stand out. There's a villain. The villain turns into a monster at the end. There's a big fight. End of story. That's pretty much how every Resident Evil game, the manga, the books, all of the movies pretty much follow that same freaking formula. And that was one of my problems I had with Infinite Darkness. And I think Infinite Darkness actually had the potential to take it to different directions. Different directions. But unfortunately, it felt like they wanted to go the safe route and just revert back to formula, especially towards the end of it. I would like to see the Dead Island film take a bit of a different direction. There was a long time ago. There was I'm not sure. I don't think he does YouTube anymore. But there was a man named Alpha Omega Sin, and one of the problems he had with some of the newer games where they were introducing new characters. And I said, I think that's one of the problems with the older these newer games, that the new games outside of those is the fact that they rely too much on the OG characters to carry the franchise rather than going in new directions with new characters. New characters and new experience will also bring about new experiences to the gameplay, storytelling, and just overall just expanding on what the Resident Evil franchise can give players, and not having to really rely so much on what they know definitely works. If they have a Resident Evil movie, the moment that they came out with a Resident Evil movie, who do people gravitate more towards? Leon that's predominantly why he's in all of the films. And I'm not sure if the film series is simply following him, but I think it would lend itself some credit if they follow going in a different direction, like with Resident Evil 7, which one of the things that made it such a refreshing gaming experience, story-wise, is that there weren't the familiar characters. There was a sense of new experience because this was a different person, that this was a more not a more interesting character, but an interesting character that has this backstory, this ties to the location and the events of the game, and that makes this series feel so much richer when you do have those new experiences. I love Leon and I love Chris, and of course I love Jill Valentine. Now, the biggest thing I can take away from this is the fact that Jill Valentine is actually going to be in this film, and it'd be nice to see her character, because outside of Sienna Guillory playing her in the live action films, we haven't seen her in the animated films yet. So I think this would be an interesting way. And I like the fact that Rebecca was in Vendetta and she attributed something a bit different. She attributed something different to the film. So I'm all for this film. I hope it looks good. The animation looks really good. I hope that the voice actors come back with it. I love the action of Vendetta. I like the action that was in Infinite Darkness, and I hope to see that we get some pretty tense scenes in this film as well. It does look like it's going to be a bunch of POWs, a lot of fighting, and that's what we've come to expect from the Resident Evil franchise. So, having said that, I'm actually interested, and I'm actually happy to see that they're continuing with this trend of releasing these animated films. I think that is a